Well, and obviously, Spook, not to like open wounds, but like a lot of people know your name from the Kansas buck that you killed, and then subsequently there was legal things that came into play from there.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
don't
It
what
was
just as a clean slate for us and the listeners, like give us the lowdown on what that. A lot of us have seen the video.
yeah, yeah.
So just
So
give us the
yeah,
lowdown on it.
it's really simple. I mean, it's very unfortunate, and to taint such an amazing deer, such an amazing hunt, be the best. It'll always go down as the best hunt of my life,
Mm.
and I'll never match it with any other experience, I don't think. But I'd been hunting Kansas for years. I loved it so much. I bought two pieces of property that were really close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
There was another property there. We had seen this buck, knew he was there. Uh, I was told that the landowner wouldn't let anybody hunt. He would never lease it, never sell it, never, 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 won't, all negative. I took a contract and a check with me when I went to talk to him. And I told him, asked him if he would be interested in leasing, selling, whatever. And well, first of all, I talked to him for about 2 hours before I even brought it up, and let him get to know me because I was his neighbor,
Yep.
And so I had a, but he wasn't a hunter; he was a farmer, which was awesome. The farm that he had wasn't really that conducive to a good farm for a farmer. It was better deer place than it was for cattle or for raising crops, and I knew that. And I knew what he liked. And so I said, well, if you have any interest in this, here's a check and here's a contract to buy your property. You look at it. If you don't have any interest in either one of them, you tear the check up, tear the contract up, and we'll be friends. And, if you ever change your mind, give me a call. And I knew immediately when he looked at it, he was going to take it. And he said, well, let me talk to my wife. And so the reason he didn't want to go ahead and sell the farm, and I told him, I said, you probably know this, you got a really big buck. I said, he's on me sometimes, he's on you sometimes. I'm sure he's on one of the other landowners or two sometimes. This buck was super aggressive. This is the best buck sign I ever hunted. I mean, he had rub trees this big, scrapes, just giant scrapes that just stunk. I mean, it was the best buck sign I've ever hunted. And I told him, I said, I believe the deer is bedding on you most of the time in a big cedar thicket and then coming off on me to feed. And I said, I was kind of looking for a place to morning hunt, but I'd like to, I'd love to buy it. But if you don't want to do that, I'll, lease it. So what he wanted to do was do the lease, and then he did the contract to purchase, but he didn't want to close on it until he found a farm that he could 1031 his money into. So he was pretty intelligent. He
Yeah,
knew
makes sense.
about the 1031 process. So all made sense. So, okay, we had a deal. Awesome, And so being a new landowner in Kansas, previous to that, as I'd mentioned before, it was always you bought a landowner voucher, and I'd always hunted with an outfitter, and he just, I'd plan a hunt, and he'd just get the voucher when he leased properties and wherever all he got them. You could buy the vouchers, a landowner could give them away. They were up to the landowner's discretion to do what they wanted to do with them.
Okay.
And so, so he always took care of getting my tag for me, obviously. So then when I bought land, I said, what do I need to do now that I own land? He said, well, now that you own land, you can just buy your tag across the counter. Simple as that. I show up, I go to the Ampride gas station. I say, hey, I'm a landowner. I want a license. I'm here to deer hunt. Okay. And so we're getting our drinks and snacks and stuff, and we up the counter, and they give me my license, and I sign it. They stick it in a pouch and hand it to me, and that's it. So, trying to shorten up the story as much as possible. I killed the deer. I ended up, spotting, stalking the deer and killing him on the land that I had the contract on to purchase. And so it's all great. shoot, if you was anywhere within 10 miles, you heard me screaming and hollering. And, you know, it was on Monster Bucks. It aired, I don't know, probably 50 times on TV. Number one selling Monster Bucks video of all time, on the cover of North American Whitetail, blah, 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 you know. And 4.5 years later, they charged me with the Lacey Act, just out of the blue. No, I didn't talk to anybody. Nobody asking me any questions. I didn't have any interview, nothing. I just get charged with the Lacey Act because obviously I brought the deer home. And they said, you know, they were going to investigate it, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, it wasn't much to investigate. I mean, I didn't have anything to hide, I didn't think, you know.
Right.
And so shortening up the story as much as possible, they finally said, because I had not yet closed on the property and not yet actually, I hadn't actively participated in the farming practices on the farm that I had the contract on, and I had it leased and a contract. Therefore, my tag was not valid for that piece of property.
Mm.
So they offered me a misdemeanor plea. I didn't want to take it because that's just not my style. You know, I didn't feel like I did anything wrong. I obviously wasn't trying to hide anything. Everybody knew, I mean, everybody knew about the deer. I got a call from, back then I was hunting with Michael and Michael Waddell and a bunch of us, T-Bone, we all used to hunt up there at the same place together. Blake Shelton, everybody knew about the deer. Candy Kitsky called me that night or the next night and said, you know, that's the biggest buck ever shot on video by a bow hunter. And I was like, I had no idea. And so at the time, Stan had the biggest one and was at 220, I think, and this buck was 230. And so then the next day, David Blanton called. They're wanting to put the footage on Monster Bucks, and we ended up making a deal later on at ATA for that. And, they put it on TV, I put it on my show. It was just, it was awesome. It was awesome. And so, I have all these long talks with my family, my dad, my wife. I've got some buddies here that are attorneys. I talk to them, my attorney in Kansas City, and they're all like, man, just get it over with and just do it. And I was like, man, it's just not right. Meanwhile, I was having multiple conversations with Hank Parker and Ted Nugent and some people like that, because my attorney told me, he said, if I defend this in federal court, he said, I'm going to cost you between $250,000 and $350,000. And they were saying, I don't know if they could do this or not, but they were saying that I wouldn't be allowed to hunt until it went to court and it was over.
Mm.
Well, how do you think that made me feel?
Yeah.
And so I was like, and even right up until the last minute, I mean, in Kansas City to go in, I'd already said that I would take the plea to go in the courtroom. Well, so just one other thing. I brought up Hank and Ted. They said that they would go to the hunting industry because they were so adamant about we need to do something to get this Lacey Act changed because it's being abused in America because, they're using these little technicalities that really don't have anything to do with, the legality of the deer. You had your license, you killed the deer in the legal shooting time with a legal weapon on your property and all this stuff. It's just, you didn't sign your license or you didn't punch your tag or you didn't do, whatever it is, you didn't do something right. And then they use that technicality to basically, in my opinion, to extort a fine out of it.
Because the Lacey Act originally was in place for basically trying to decommercialize game species and across state lines for profitability and stuff. It wasn't really anything to do from a average hunter aspect.
Oh, exactly. Originally, it really didn't even have anything to do with hunting.
Correct.
But it's so broad. I mean, you could go to a dove hunt in Kentucky across the state line and come back over to Clarksville and filling up with gas in the game warden having to be there. And just so for whatever weird reason, you got one dove over the limit in the truck.
Yeah, you're Lacey Act.
You're up for the Lacey Act. You know, and so that's not what we all know it's not what the Lacey Act was designed for. And so we were working super, super hard to get that changed because, you know, Don Jr. and Eric are both hunters. And so they were, you know, they were trying to get the Lacey Act rewritten while Trump was in office. And they said, well, and Ted was working really hard on it because he's closer to him than, you know, most of the rest of us. And they said they were going to do it second term. Well, of course, we all know what happened there. And so we're hoping that if, you know, obviously we're all praying and everything we can do to hoping that he gets in this time. And then I think it'll get changed.
Interesting.
So, but anyways, I ended up taking the plea. And, you know, and so then
what was the plea there, Spook? Like, what did they basically say? This is what you got to do.
Well, of course, I don't even remember exactly what their wording was when they went public with it. But, you know, they try to make it sound like you did everything but slit your mom's throat, you know. But so illegally harvesting a buck, blah, 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 trespassing. I don't know what all it was, but all it was just, I was in their mind, I was in possession of I was issued the wrong tag. And so that's what it all came down to, is just you know, obviously it was in season on property I had permission to be on. I had a tag, blah, blah, blah. They just said that. Now, even my attorney said, listen, you've got a great case. He said, you've got, and every time I push back on any part of the plea bargain, they give in. They wanted me to give me a year's probation and miss the following deer season. I said, nope, not doing it. I said, tell them we'll go to court. They came back, said, well, 6 months and you missed turkey season. I said, done. I don't care enough about turkey season to
agree.
care, you know. I mean, I love turkey hunting, but don't get me wrong.
You
know, missing a turkey season was, and plus my son was playing high school basketball and I was way more interested in him than I mean, you know, you guys, so you'll love this. I got to throw this in here because it's the only thing I've ever done that I love better than hunting is playing ball. So I love to play basketball it's just like, I'm just like insanely passionate about sports, but especially basketball. So my son was playing high school ball and I was just like really we had spent a lot of time training him. I had buddies that played the NBA that trained Coleman. And so we were, you know, I was really involved and engulfed in my son's basketball career. So, you know, I was just like, you know, let's just get it over with. And so, yeah, like I said, every time I push back on something, they would lessen what's that tell you?
Yeah, they don't have a case.
Yeah. And, but the not getting to hunt until it went to trial, and then the money, which again, this was, you know, post 2008, business wasn't as good. Things weren't the same, you know, and I don't mind saying, I'll just say it, you know, I call it the years of Obamanism. And it was just, you know, things just weren't as good financially during that time. I wasn't getting to do, you know, a lot of the same things that I, you know, had been used to beforehand. And because financially it was just a harder time. And so both my kids were in private Christian school. And so it's just, you know, it's a time when you have to put other things in front of hunting. And, you know, the family is obviously more important. And so, so I just decided to take the plea. I wished a million times that I hadn't have since then, but I took it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. I mean, and it, you know, it's kind of like talking about, you know, going all in and putting the money up front on a buck or something. It's like you could have went all in on that court case and paid the money and stuff. And man, at the end of the day, if they want to fine you on something, they might find you on something.
Exactly. And I really believe now that I've learned so much more about how things operate, I think that had I just taken that chance, I think that we would have settled on. But the problem is if you take any kind of plea whatsoever, they run with that. And,
Sure.
you know, guilty. He admitted he did this, admitted he did that. I didn't admit to nothing. I took it as a way just to get it over with.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I admitted I killed a giant buck and y'all don't like it.
What was the tag that they issued you? Did they issue a landowner voucher?
So this was right when the transition went from they stopped doing landowner vouchers and they started doing a, quote, hunt your own land tag.
Oh, geez.
Which, ignorance of the law is no excuse, but technically only limits you to the land that you own.
So even though you had a contract to purchase it, since you hadn't closed on it, you didn't own it.
So the argument was, and I was told by an older gentleman that I respected very much and who had lived there his whole life, he said, in Kansas, he said, now I can't tell you about other states. He said, in Kansas, once you sign, you put down money and you sign that contract, he said, technically in Kansas, now I didn't follow up with this because we never did actually, wasn't a need to, but he said, it's always been understood. He said, it's kind of like a cowboy law or whatever, that once you have a contract with no contingencies and money's down, in the eyes of the law here in Kansas, you own the land. He said, you can do whatever you want to. And so now that was post this all happening, obviously, because obviously I didn't think, I mean, I had 2 great places to hunt that the buck was using. A lot. So I had 15 rubs as big as your leg and 20 scrapes around where my stand was at, and a big food plot and corn everywhere. And you know, everything a deer could want. And I mean, it was awesome. The problem was, it was more of a, when I say problem, it's the kind of place I didn't want to go into it in the mornings because I couldn't hardly get into it without messing it up. So it was mainly just an evening spot. So I was wanting to hunt this other place. And then when we got our agreement in place, it just so happened that the very first evening I went in there to set up a stand is the day that I saw him and was able to kill him. So, which was, you know, I mean, the whole thing, and I've said, I put it even on my own DVD, and I've done some other shows about it. And when I did my interview on it, I was standing by the deer, and he's right here, you know, right here beside me. But I said, you know, I know there's been some controversy and rumors and all kinds of stuff about this deer over the years, but I said, I'm as proud of him today as I was the day I killed him, and it'll always go down as the best hunt of my life.
Take me